Good morning, everybody. I hope your day is going well. We're still working our way through this book, God Online, A Mystic's Guide to the Internet by Bruce Epperly. And we're getting close to being done, but not quite. And chapter 8, he says, pause, notice, open, and respond. And he talks about Gerald May and the work of Gerald May. But he starts with Psalm 46. Be still and know that I am God. I am exalted among the nations. I am exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. And then he goes into talking about a quote from Gerald May about contemplative presence. We must finally come to clarity about the natural grace balance and rhythm of stretching and yielding. One might say that contemplative prayer is nothing other than consecrated openness of stretching and yielding. Think of stretching as reaching and opening, and yielding as acceptance and letting be. Stretching is the self-claiming dimension. Yielding is the welcoming dimension. Stretching is hopeful aspiration. In it, the power of our selfhood is expressed. Yielding is like helpful hospitality. In it, the dignity of our selfhood is expressed. Today in Bishop, it's going to be like 102 degrees. It's going to be really hot. And so I had the option after I read this to do this now, or probably not to do it at all because it's going to be really, really hot. And while I could do it inside, it really doesn't have the same feel to it as doing it outside. But one of the things that I haven't really talked about on my Facebook Lives, possibly because it's kind of a first world problem. Do you hear the noise, the yard noise in my neighborhood? It's so simple, and because, you know, people here have nice yards and they do a good job keeping them up. But if you're putting stuff online, it is, I won't say it's the bane of my existence, but I will say it is pretty annoying that I have to really seek the times where people aren't outside in order to do these Facebook Lives. And I have a challenge then in trying to get this to you in meaningful ways and in timely ways. And sometimes it really gets on my nerves. I think we all have our triggers, and I get so goal-oriented sometimes that I'm triggered by things that stop me from meeting my goals, and that's really how this feels. But I decided to just step into that with you today, because when you're talking about contemplation is a lifestyle. It's something that we have to continue to pull ourselves back to, whether it's online or in real life. There's always going to be something that triggers us, something that upsets our equilibrium. Sometimes it's something as simple as people working on their yards and me not being able to do Facebook Lives without all this noise in the background, which is silly in the great scheme of the tragedies of our time. But, you know, it's a trigger. And then additionally, there may be other times where there's really something, maybe you were abused as a child and somebody yells at you, or you had a bad experience at some point in your life and then something reminds you of it. Or you really do have to interact with these really big social justice problems of our time, and yet he in this loving way, Gerald May invites us to do some things that will kind of help us through. And he leads us through pausing, noticing our environment, opening to the fullness of experience, yielding to the moment, stretching toward God, and responding to these experiences and letting our life speak to transform the world on earth as it is in heaven. So pausing, noticing, opening, and then responding. Sometimes we do this backwards. We respond first and we pause later, and that gets us into trouble because then we put into the world some things that cause us other problems, and so we don't really want to do that. So for example, me getting mad about people doing their yards, it doesn't really do me any good. I enjoy the beautiful yards. You have to cut the grass and things to keep those, and so I just kind of have to get over myself, right? Or film in different places and whatnot. But then, there's some much bigger problems, including all the tragedy around COVID, or things that are happening with Black folk in our country right now. There's all kind of things that we need to respond to, but if we don't pause first and recenter and think about it from a God's perspective and not just our own perspective, then we sometimes cause more issues and more problems. So he suggests that at least when you're online, that you do this kind of a thing where you pause, notice, open, stretch, yield, and respond. And so here I offer this to you today, consecrating the moments online. So you pause, you take a few deep breaths, visualizing yourself inhaling God's Spirit and exhaling any stress or anxiety you may be experiencing. You notice, what do you see online? What is its impact on you emotionally? What responses is it evoking? You open, embrace the fullness of your experience, including God's presence in your life. You stretch, reach out toward God's guidance and wisdom. Yield by listening and accepting God's wisdom in this moment. And then you respond. Your response may be the Jesus prayer, a spiritual affirmation, some deep centering breaths, or a prayer for someone you encounter online. It may simply be to be still rather than comment, recognizing that you and your respondent are both in God's care. So as we go through all of these things together in this crazy and still being redefined time, I hope that what you will do with me is to be able to pause and to reflect, and then to respond in ways that go towards God's love and the manifestation of God's grace in this moment. And so I hope that will help you as you think about online things. And tomorrow we're going to be talking about Howard Thurman, who, please look him up because the next chapter is on him. And I think it's very timely that we talk about him and some of his prophetic responses, because tomorrow I'm probably going to finally talk a little bit about some of the things that I've been reflecting on related to Minneapolis and racism. And they need to be said, not because it's political, but because it's morally the right thing to do, and because the Christian church believes that there's not slave nor free, Greek nor Jew, but that we're all one in Christ. So let us think about those things, ponder them in our hearts, and do things which act for the greater good of everyone today and every day. God bless y'all. Have a good day. Stay cool.